Welcome back to The Disciplined Dividend, the podcast that dissects the psychology behind success, not just in finance, but in life. I'm your host, Alex, and today we are diving deep into a topic that separates the perennial winner from the casual gambler, the quiet, often forgotten power of constructive self-criticism.
And Alex, I'm thrilled to be here. My name is Ben, and as someone who has consulted with hundreds of professional traders, I can tell you that this topic, self-criticism, is the single greatest predictor of longevity and profitability I've ever seen. It's not about the model, it's about the mirror.
The mirror, I like that. Let's start with the central puzzle that haunts every person who enters the market. You have two traders. They're both using the exact same technical setup, say a moving average cross. They have the same amount of capital and access to the exact same information flow. Yet after 6 months, one is profitable and the other is wiped out. Why is that? Where is the definitive answer hiding, if not in the charts?
It's hiding in the gap between what they know and how they behave. We are constantly bombarded with expertise, the knowledge of candlestick patterns, macroeconomic reports, and algorithmic setups. But that expertise just gets you to the starting line. What allows you to cross it and stay in the game is experience, and that experience is driven by mental toughness. Specifically, the capacity for objective self-analysis, what we call constructive self-criticism.
So technical and fundamental analysis, they're just table stakes, right? They give you a thesis. The difference is the human factor. But let's clarify this. Most people, when they lose a trade, are already self-critical. They feel angry, they berate themselves. How do we distinguish that emotional self-flagellation from constructive self-criticism?
That distinction is crucial. When you lose money, your brain registers a pain response, almost like a physical wound. That's a concept behavioral economists call loss aversion. This pain, if unmanaged, immediately morphs into anger or frustration, and that is a learning killer. It puts you into a defensive emotional state. Constructive self-criticism, on the other hand, is the objective, almost cold evaluation of self. You're trying to separate the person who made the decision from the scientist who is analyzing the experiment's result.
That's a powerful metaphor. The scientist analyzing the experiment. That brings us directly to the definitive tool mentioned in the source material, the trading journal. If a scientist doesn't record their variables and results, it's not science. So what makes a trading journal a scientific tool rather than just an accounting ledger?
A truly constructive journal is your decision library. It's not enough to note the currency pair, the time, and the profit and loss. That only tells you what happened. A professional journal must record the why and the how. It needs to capture 4 critical variables.
Hit us with those 4 variables because this is where the actionable advice starts.
Absolutely. Number 1, emotional state. How did you feel before, during, and after the trade? Were you anxious, overconfident, or bored? If you can track overconfidence leading to rule breaking, that's powerful data. Number 2, the exact reason and signal. This forces intellectual honesty. Did the entry strictly follow a signal from your written plan, or was it a feeling? Number 3, the deviation. If you broke a rule, which one was it and why? Did you move your stop loss? Did you exit early? And finally, number 4, the key metric. Beyond P&L, did the trade maintain your planned risk-to-reward ratio, RR?
I love that last point because it shifts the focus away from the money and onto the process. You could lose $100 but have a perfect RR setup, and that's a success for the process. Conversely, you can make $500, but if you skipped the stop loss, that was a dangerous, poor quality trade.
Exactly. And here is the real magic of the journal. You are not reviewing it to judge yourself. You are reviewing it to identify patterns. If you notice that 70% of your emotional, high-risk errors occur on Tuesday mornings or immediately after a heavy lunch, you've identified an inefficiency in your routine, not a failure in the market. You solved the lunch problem, not the market problem.
That's a major takeaway right there. So let's talk about the silent killer in the room that stops this objective analysis, the ego. The source material calls it a dangerous multiplier, like high inflation. It constantly erodes real value. How does the ego manifest in the market, and how does self-criticism shut it down?
The ego manifests when it demands to always be right. It protects flawed predictions. I've seen it countless times. A trader clings to a losing position, doubling down, simply because they knew it was going to rebound. It's like a central bank refusing to admit its initial monetary policies failed, which only worsens the crisis. The ego is saying, I can't take this small loss, it means I was wrong.
Right, so financial humility is the antidote.
Precisely. Self-criticism allows for that humility. It teaches you that the market neither knows nor cares about your opinion or your capital. The goal isn't to be right, but to have a process that is correct, measurable, and repeatable. A professional trader is not the one who never loses. They are the one who knows precisely why they lost and adjusts immediately.
That acceptance is the first step toward authority over your trading. So, to build that authority, we have to move beyond just identifying the ego driven behavior and actually quantify it.
You must quantify it. If you say, I have an impulsivity problem, that's a feeling. If you say, impulsive entries due to FOMO accounted for 5 trades this month, resulting in X dollars of uncontrolled loss, that's a metric. That is how you transform an emotional error into measurable data. Furthermore, you accept randomness. Some losses are inevitable. They are the cost of doing business, and self-criticism teaches you to delegate discipline to your system, like a hard stop loss, not to your shaky emotion.
The anatomy of error and cognitive distortions. So, that's a great transition into the anatomy of a loss checklist we need to apply every time. The novice sees a loss as the end of the road, but the expert sees it as input data. Ben, what are the 4 surgical steps we need to use to dissect a loss and turn it into a lesson?
We need to put on our lab coats and keep emotions out of the operating room. Step 1. Rule versus action. Simple question. Did the entry or exit align 100% with your written plan? This fosters discipline and trust in your system. Step 2. Market context. Were there major macroeconomic events, a Fed announcement, an ECB rate decision that you ignored? This increases your expertise and knowledge.
So, you followed your rules perfectly, but the market context was wrong. That's a flaw in the plan, not the execution. So, what's step 3?
Step 3. Risk management. Was the position size or the stop loss correct? Did you risk more than your predefined daily or trade limit, say 1%? This strengthens your authority through capital control. And the final critical step, which loops us back to the human factor. Were you tired, distracted, or attempting to recover a previous loss, what we call revenge trading? This evaluates your experience and your mental state.
I love the metaphor in the document about the brick and the architecture. A trade is a brick. A loss is a poorly placed brick. The novice complains about the brick, but the constructive trader analyzes the mistake, corrects the technique, and ensures the next brick is perfectly aligned to build the large structure of profitability. It's about the consistency of the structure.
Exactly. And to maintain that consistency, you have to fight another massive psychological hurdle, confirmation bias. This is the tendency we all have to seek out, interpret, and remember information that confirms what we already believe. In trading, it means we conveniently recall the times we were right and minimize or totally forget the times we broke a rule and failed.
So we're essentially acting as our own biased lawyer, only presenting evidence that makes us look good. How do we combat that?
You have to act as a relentless prosecutor against yourself. You need to actively look for evidence that proves your trade hypothesis was incorrect, even if the trade resulted in a profit. The result does not validate the process. This is where the concept of availability heuristic comes in, as behavioral economists like Kahneman and Thaler have studied.
The availability heuristic. Remind us what that is in practical trading terms.
It's the tendency to overvalue recent outcomes. A trader might have a streak of 3 consecutive wins. That's highly available information in their mind, leading them to falsely believe they are invincible and to risk too much on the 4th trade. Constructive self-criticism requires you to review all trades with the same magnifying glass, regardless of whether they were green or red.
That leads to the most practical, actionable tip we can give listeners regarding their journal: the adherence score.
This is absolutely non-negotiable. Assign every trade a score from 1 to 10 based on your adherence to the plan, not the monetary result. If you gained $500 but skipped the stop loss, the score is a 3 out of 10. Your objective must be to hit 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10 scores consistently, irrespective of the P&L. This is how you forge trustworthiness in your process,